10 countries with failing governments. Hello, happy day everyone. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. We sincerely hope all of you out there are doing great like always. In today's video, we're going to discuss a list of 10 countries with failing governments. With no delay, let us begin our video. Number 10. Afghanistan. The country on our list to begin with is Afghanistan. We must be familiar with the global news on Taliban terrorist military groups terrifying the nations of Afghanistan. Over the years, the United States and Afghanistan share pretty much of a history politically. The United States had been funding the governments of the underdeveloped nations, out of which Afghanistan is one of the nations. The Islamic militant group Taliban has retaken control of Afghanistan for 2 decades. It is a significant fact that trillions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of lives were deprived by the United States following the Taliban's attack on 9/11 2 decades ago. However, even under the influence of Taliban, Afghanistan had been progressing economically with a political stability to a little extent. For 20 years, the government of Afghanistan, aided by the US government, was blooming. Unfortunately, as the recent viral news states, the Afghan government has failed and collapsed again, with the Taliban forces occupying the presidential headquarters, having brought up massacres and drastic sufferings across the nations. The government of Afghanistan failed to stop the rising of the terrorist group. With the Taliban have taken control over the entire political landscape of Afghanistan, no country has come forward ready to help. Taliban forces have already killed numerous citizens and disconnected the nation's internet access. Let us pray for Afghanistan. Number 9. North Korea. The 9th country on our list is North Korea. Yes, we must be aware of the dictatorship rule of Kim Jong-un. The North Korean government does not share anything or everything with the UN or any global media outside the nation. No one can visit the country at ease. There are extremely strict policies that the North Korean government has established. During the COVID-19 pandemic, all the world nations, including the United States, United Kingdoms, Russia, China, are adversely affected. However, it was reported that Kim Jong-un had released a statement that no COVID cases has been found in the country. It was such a bold, shocking news that made the United Nations doubtful. Just how? The odd, unpleasant, and inhuman laws of the government have led to silent sufferings of the people. One of the major issues prevailing in the country is the violence against girls and women. Almost 70% of the girls and women who fled and settled in South Korea have claimed that women are treated and harassed physically in the North Korea. They are given no human rights. The real taboo is the fact that the only victim is all to blame. How inhumane! We can certainly say North Korea has failed as a government for the people, as they treat people worse like slaves. No North Korean citizens can say that he or she is leading a life without troubles. Number 8. Syria. The 8th nation with the failed government on our list is Syria. The economic devastations caused by 10 years of conflict in Syria cannot be overstated. Targeted attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure, including attacks on markets, hospitals, and schools in rural and urban areas, have resulted in an estimated about 4 million civilian deaths and half of Europe pre-war populations displaced internally as refugees. The displaced family and other sensitive households are caught in the middle of financial crisis caused by rapidly depreciating currency and a lack of available jobs. The people of Syria are struggling hard to obtain bread for a day. This is something so miserable about the adverse impact of the war has made. The helpless Syrians continue to bear the burden and hardships on ongoing crisis, from the beginning of the conflict 10 years ago to today's horrific levels of death, destructions, and economic collapse. Most of the time, this has a significant impact on the future of innocent children. While the conflict has caused irreparable physical damage to communities, families, and children, the economic crisis has also had a huge negative impact. After the Syrian war, the government has failed to revive the lifestyle of citizens of the nations, which has led to the rocketing mortality rate due to poverty. Moving on to the next country on our list. Number 7. Pakistan. The next country to join our list is Pakistan. Pakistan was a part of Indian subcontinent before the partition of India in 1947. It was formed because of the demand for a separate nation for the Muslim community. Pakistan has joined our list because it is one of such country that can be listed in between failing and failed countries. The country that follows democracy is extremely weak in democratic rule. For example, no prime minister of the country has fully completed his term of 5 years in office, which adds to the downfall and poor democratic conditions. There are so many cultural, political, and religious conditions prevailing in the country and are supported by the government that does nothing but hinder the growth of the country and cause adverse impacts economically, leading the citizens of the nations to suffer. It is stated by several nations that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorist groups, pointing out that Osama bin Laden and his terrorist organizations had roots in Pakistan. It was also reported that the Pakistan government was supportive of several terrorist groups, including the Taliban group, which is currently terrifying Afghanistan nation as a whole. another huge drawback is that women are denied several rights. There is no general equality in Pakistan. If these conditions become worse, the politically unstable government of Pakistan would fail the citizens for sure. Number 6. Zimbabwe. The sixth country on our list is Zimbabwe, one of the very well-known of African countries. Generally, one of the most common issues the African people face is racism. Here, in this case, the people of Zimbabwe go through more than racism, but also inhumane violence, injustice, immoral, and corruptions. This is all led by different political parties that constitute the government of Zimbabwe. The life of common people in Zimbabwe is unimaginable and extremely hard, full of suffering but nothing. The political climate is wild and corrupted. Anyone who speaks against the government becomes a victim, being subjected to physical violence and sometimes death. With an accelerating mortality rate, hospitals have become ghost buildings. There are insufficient needs for doctors and nurses to treat the common people. Nurses and doctors have been on strike since 2018, demanding better working conditions and remunerations, but their demands have gone unheeded. People are dying as a result of lack of access to medications, and most people cannot afford to go to private hospitals because they charge dollars. We sincerely hope all these sufferings will come to an end one day. Number 5. Somalia. The fifth country on our list is Somalia. Somalia is one such country known to be with extreme political as well as wild worst conditions due to the absence of the government. The country and its citizens are still primarily endlessly engulfed in wars that started over decades ago. At present, there is no peace in the country as the Somali civil war is still going on. Let us have a look at some of the facts and history of the Somali civil war. From 1988 to 1990s, the Somali armed forces began fighting various armed insurgent groups, including the Somali Democratic Salvation Front in the northeast, the Somali National Movement in the northwest, and the United Organizations of Somalia. This led to the arrival of the United Nations military observers in July 1992, followed by larger peacekeeping forces. Without a central government, Somalia becomes a failed country. In 2005 until 2007, there were persistent and destructive conflicts in the south, but the scale and intensity of the fights were much less than the early 1990s. The UCI subsequently split into more radical groups, notably Al-Shabaab, and has since been fighting with the Somali government and the AMISOM peacekeeping force authorized by the African Union to control the country. In October 2011, after the preparatory meeting, the Kenyan army entered southern Somalia to fight Al-Shabaab and establish a buffer zone in Somalia. The federal government of Somalia was established in August 2012 and was the country's first permanent central government since the beginning of the civil war. However, the international stakeholders and analysts began to describe Somalia as a fragile state that is moving towards stability. Let us hope for the best. Number 4. Haiti. Many of us may not be familiar with this country. Haiti is one of the Caribbean countries of the African continent known for its unbalanced and violent political climate. The country is packed with violent riots and economical crisis. The Haitian people exhibit barbaric attitudes where there's a rise intergroup conflicts and riots. The downfall of the country started after the dismissal of Prime Minister John-Henry Jant. His successor, John Michael Lapin, was the third interim prime minister appointed by President Jovenel Moïse in 2 years and failed to win the support of parliament. This includes fights between members of Congress and the recent Python-like strategy to stopping debate by throwing furniture in a Senate chamber into the adjacent courtyard to confirm the leveling at work. Whether it's bad luck or limited political acumen, Moise's choice of prime minister will only deepen people's lack of confidence in his presidency. An important consequence of the delay in the confirmations of the new prime minister is that Haiti is operating without an approved national budget. This is not only confirms Haiti's poor governance but also seriously affected the country's short-term prospects. The loan contract signed with the International Monetary Fund earlier this year was initially suspended during John Lapin's transition period, but due to the lack of approved budget, it expired at the end of May. This has also delayed other pending capital flows from the World Bank and the European Union. Political and economic dysfunction on the streets of Haiti has also had dire consequences. The core issues of corruption in the public sectors runs through it, and the massive misappropriations of Petro-Caribe funds is just the most obvious manifestations of the problem. However, due to the government's mismanagement of the park, including corruptions, increased insecurity, and deterioration of facility maintenance, there is now a threat of leaving the border with the Dominican Republic. Yes, as far as we have come to know, the government has collapsed politically and is now trying to meet economical needs. Number 3. Congo. Congo is next on our list. The heart of the African continent is historically known for the imperialism prevailing over it. The contemporary issues of Congo is the brutal and violent political repressions that started in the year 2016, with the government being the barrier for human rights and leading to vast bloodshed. let us have a look at the background of the prevailing failed state of the government and the suffering of people. Although Congo's vast mineral wealth can help meet the emergency and other basic needs of the poor, the proceeds of any new investments are more likely to end up in the pockets of those in power. President Joseph Kabila postponed the elections after the end of the 2 constitutional terms in December 19, 2016, and used violence, repressions, and corruptions to consolidate his power. In the last 3 years of political protests, 4,444 Congolese security forces shot and killed almost 300 people. Instead, they should strive to ensure that sufficient funds are raised to meet the humanitarian and protection needs that threaten the lives of the Congolese people. Congolese needs the opportunity to elect a new president who is accountable to the people and committed to ending the violence, impunity, and suffering in the Congo. Number 2. Iraq. The second country on our list is Iraq, one of the most unstable countries in terms of political atmosphere. Some severe wars and famines have hit the countries and made them go through hardships. However, the impact of the government is worse among the people of Iraq. One of the most important reasons is the authoritarian rule for most of human history. But this does not always mean the kind of state-supported atrocities common in modern Iraq. Therefore, the widespread sectarian violence during the US occupations may be a new form, but it is far from a precedent in Iraq's history. Another important reason is corruption as the root in Iraq's culture. It is reported that Iraq is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, having the rank of 170 out of 175 corrupted countries. There is another significant fact that the commissions to investigate the extent of wrongdoing has calculated that up to $330 billion in public funds is missing as a result of malfeasance by officials. That is indeed a bad one. Moving on to the final one. Number 1. Yemen. The final country on our list is Yemen. The global pandemic has affected the country of Yemen very badly, more than any other country. That the government of Yemen could not do anything but simply suppress the people by violence who are already suffering from poverty. It is also noticed that the nations as a whole had not revived from the civil war. Yemen is known for its oil well business. The country is considered to be extremely vulnerable to the epidemic because civil wars have already prevailed in the dire humanitarian situations there, and continued famine, cholera, and military blockades by Saudi Arabia and its allies have been made the situations worse. The United Nations Agency and its global partners are seeking $2.41 billion to combat the widespread of COVID-19 in Yemen, the worst humanitarian emergency in the world to date. We sincerely hope everything will be alright soon. That's all a wrap, my dear friend. We bet you all must have loved our video to the fullest. Please subscribe to our channel, give it a thumbs up, and share it with your friends if you liked the video. If you have any thoughts, opinions, or suggestions to share, feel free to drop down a comment in comment box. And goodbye for now, stay safe until we meet again with similar entertaining video.